and welcome back to part 5 of Final Fantasy XII, where today, after a short journey through the waterworks, we'll be infiltrating the royal palace via its cellar, and hopefully stealing back any and all of its treasures to give back to the people of Rabanastre, as a jab towards the Empire to show that they are still not welcome here, despite what they think and what they say. But as you work your way through the waterway, as soon as you start, the path splits in two directions. There's no real reason to go this southern direction because it leads to a dead end that you can't really do anything with. But it's worth showing off all of these little chunks and extra areas now, because on the other end of the game, this is another dungeon that will completely open up and will have far more for us to explore within it. And get used to me saying that. There's a healthy amount of dungeons that when you first visit, you can't actually go everywhere within the dungeon. You can only go through some of it, and then later on, either for a side quest or most of the time just for beating the game, you will get access to the rest of it, where very special and unique treasures and very powerful monsters lie in wait for you. This being one of them, and it's actually one of the more annoying ones, but thankfully I won't have to worry about that until much later in the game, because there's a pretty annoying puzzle involving altering the water and opening different doors down here that takes forever, especially if you don't know what ones you're supposed to do, because you could just end up going in a circle for ages. And what's worse is that if you open and close the wrong doors, until you go back and reopen them, you can kind of trap yourself in. So if you get yourself trapped and then save, you still have to try and re-navigate that bloody puzzle to get out, and it's a huge motivation killer. There's no way to dead game in this that I'm aware of, but it is something that is a huge motivation killer if you get yourself trapped and then say fuck it, I'll come back, and then realise when you come back, oh no, you literally did trap yourself and you've got to now rework this puzzle backwards to try and work out what it is. Not that I'm talking from experience or anything, I'm just saying it's something that when we get to, I'll be very, very particular about what leads to what and what needs to be done to get through it. There's another dungeon as well, but to be fair, we haven't even got to it yet, so I won't spoil it, that straight up doesn't give you access to your map and is extremely maze-like, and everything looks the same. And it's kind of like the most hated dungeon in this game in terms of post-game stuff. If you're only going through the main game, there's one dungeon that people seem to have a disdain for more. And I get the hate for it, but it doesn't bother me too much. But maybe it's just because before I went through 12, I went through a lot of SMT games. And if you've played a mainline Shin Megami Tensei game, or even things like Persona 5, because Persona 5 seems to kind of adopt it, you're used to final dungeons in their RPGs being freakishly long. Persona 5 was pretty generous, but I'm thinking like, I played SMT4 Apocalypse not long before I picked up 12 for the first time, and the final dungeon of 4 Apocalypse is the longest goddamn thing I've ever experienced in a fucking video game. The Realm of Gods is fucking atrocious. It has a really crap aesthetic, everything looks the same, the music drones, it's more like white noise, and it's deliberate white noise. And it took me like 17 or 18 hours just to get through it, because it's a fucking maze. But less about SMT, more about this. The point is, when we get to that dungeon, because I won't really spoil, I'm just looking for things to talk about because this area isn't that interesting. You won't see me complaining about it as much as a lot of other people do, because it really doesn't bother me. Long-winded dungeons is just more of a test. But I should talk about the fact that there are new enemies down here. The rats, technically this is the first time you fought them in an actual environment that's meant for battle, and not that weird little training area that we saw Varn in right at the start. But there are also all these fish-like enemies, like the Razorfin here. The bigger ones are hostile, the smaller ones are passive unless you attack them. So it's worth keeping that in mind. Now, if it says couldn't steal, it means they do have something, your luck wasn't good enough to get it. If it says they have nothing, you got to pay attention to that difference, because it catches out everyone in literally every Final Fantasy. When it says couldn't steal, people are like, does that mean it has nothing? And eventually they give up trying, when in reality, if it says that, it means they do have something, you just didn't get it. But I suppose there was no real easy way, other than just saying, you're still failed, but they do have something. But that's a bit long-winded. Like you, but like it was a bit of an issue no matter what way they tried to take it at the time. All the main loot on your path in the treasure chests aren't going to be anything of immediate use to you, so don't worry about it. Like, they're not like major loot, it's just the generic randomized loot, so you're going to get the odd potions, the odd smear of gil, things like that. Also, these flying enemies, like these steelings, which sounds like a Pokemon. It sounds like a steel flying type, isn't it? Stealing. Anyway, these steelings, flying type enemies, or flying enemies in general, because you got me on Pokemon now when I said flying type, god damn it. They will ignore in boundaries in the map. Unless it's a physical wall, they will fly over it, so they will be in spots you physically can't reach sometimes. And there are some enemies later in the game, mostly in post-game areas, that will stay out of physical attack reach. And so you'll only be able to hit them with magic. Or ranged attacks such as a crossbow, or a gun, or things like that. As a principle, I tend to check my license board after every level up, just to see if there's anything new that I can get for my character, because you build up license points gradually as you go on, but if you're checking it every 5 minutes, you'll just end up disappointing yourself, because it doesn't build up that quick. You might have noticed that we only get like 1 or 2 license points per encounter, and this remains throughout the entirety of the journey. But I do pick up first aid now, because we'll be getting it pretty much given to us a little later on. So getting it now will save the hassle later on, and will give us ability to heal despite not having a white mage in our party. Or any kind of white mage based as you go. But once you get to these stairs and go to climb them, this is your point. This is your point where you will not be able to return to Rabanashte for quite some while. So when you're ready, accept and go up, but if you're not comfortable, don't think you're strong enough, or are just unsure, go back and prepare. Alternatively, you could just save on an alternate file if you want to just try it out and see if you're strong enough or not, because then you could always just load the older one if not. But we're now in the Royal Palace of Rabanashte, and you might notice that bizarre pot that looks a bit different than the other treasures. Similar to the big treasure chests in Kingdom Hearts, if it's an urn, it means it's a more important treasure that is worth your time, and just like Kingdom Hearts, it's usually maps. By finding this, you get the map to the whole palace, so you can see everywhere in here. Which is kind of something that I'm going to bring up a lot. I don't mean to compare this, but these games, you can kind of tell they were developed around the same time, both this and Kingdom Hearts 2. They both released in 2006 in the UK as well, so like that's kind of fits into my point. So there's a couple things that they just kind of, like a couple design philosophies and ideas that they kind of share a little. Yeah, Final Fantasy is obviously more Final Fantasy and more unique, but still. Also, all of these loots are pre-designed, they're not random, so make sure to loot every chest here, because as you saw, we just got a fucking elixir. And for those not in the know, if you've never played a Square game, or just most JRPGs, an elixir isn't like a potion. It fully restores your health, no matter what, and fully restores your MP, no matter what. It will ignore everything and will just fully restore you. There's also a stronger version of it called a Mega Elixir that you usually can't buy, can only find or make. That does the same but for the entire party in one go, making the Mega Elixir something that you want to keep for super bosses and final bosses, because it's a complete reset. You get a complete reset that undoes the entirety of your enemy's work, making both elixirs and Mega Elixirs straight up like your best friend, but it's the best friend you never use. Like the ongoing joke that's been like this way for as long as I remember about the Final Fantasy series is that the elixirs and Mega Elixirs, because they're a rare commodity or usually a very expensive commodity, like the elixirs are usually like 50,000 gil in Final Fantasy, because they're such a rare and expensive commodity, you just don't use them. You're like, oh, I'll use them for a special occasion, you'll use them when they're important, and you just never do. But anyway, if you try and go upstairs, you're stopped by the guard because no one is allowed up. And this palace servant up here, if you go and talk to him, will give you the idea to distract him and teach you something that is going to be a part of several mini games for the early game. Like, they kind of drift away from it later on, but for early game they do it a lot. And it's pressing the square button to shout out loud in public spaces. Also, I try and go around the back way because I thought, yeah, try and avoid his eyesight, but no, you just got to swerve him and you'll be fine. But once you're up here, you're in a place that you're not supposed to be. So from this point onwards, we cannot be spotted by any guards. And also, you might have just spotted it for a split second, I got a bit of screen tearing when this room opened up. It happened on the recording and I was like, what? Like, it was like a proper screen tear as well, not even like a small one. But the puzzle here is using the shout to lure the guards so you can get around them to get to a specific sigil that the crescent stone that you have will interact with. You're looking for the symbol that's on the right side of the screen. And then from there, once you've interacted with the sigil, finding what it's lit up and interacting with it. Don't worry too much about the range of the guards, you pretty much have to be in front of them for them to spot you.
Hey, Buckethead.
The only thing is that their hearing ability isn't far. You have to go a little onto their corridor to call them and then move. But kind of cheekily, your test shout, because you're probably always going to use your first shout on the first guard you see, just to see what happens. Your test shout traps you. Because it's more, I wanted to show your first run and then after show what you're supposed to do. But as you can tell, you can see on the mini-map, we're surrounded by guards now. And no matter what you try and do, they will spot you because you'll go onto their square almost. Thankfully you don't have to get back through, it just resets you here. And it resets the guards as well. So you're supposed to instead come down here and call the guards down, and then call the first guards down, so then you can squeeze through this gap.
Hello?
Kind of like moving two chess pieces down in a way that doesn't make them clash together. Because now when you call these guys down, we can just swerve around them. Because the sigil we need is the second of 3, because there's 3 rows going through it, and this middle row is the one that we need, which I guess makes it the easiest to work out. It's just the middle one. It's not a difficult puzzle, but this is the one you need to interact with. We're looking at it from the wrong angle, but the moment it says lion sigil, you should be good, especially if you're British, because you're used to that design of a lion, really. And now the thing is, it's going to make one of these walls start glowing, but the glow isn't visible unless you are next to it. So you'll be hugging the wall. So see, if you go up to that one over there, even though it's not glowing now, it will remain not glowing because it's the wrong one. But it wouldn't start glowing till around now, if it was the right one. So when your first playthrough, go out of your way to interact with them. But to finish off this puzzle, it's easy enough. You're just carrying on this left side, making it all move down, because the wall that you need is in the corner. These guards on your right hand side, they've never spotted me. I think unless you run up into them, they're not going to spot you there. They're just there to stop you crossing the bridge, because they won't listen to any shouts. But as you can see, you see how close I had to get before the glow started to appear. Well, our palace invasion of heist missions so far so good. We're not quite there yet. We've got a few more little puzzle rooms now, but that takes care of the secret passage. Now where's the treasure? I like how Van goes, hey, watch it! Like, what? You're trying to be sneaky here. Don't shout at a door. And you can tell this is a secret area because it's not on the map, so I just deactivate it because it's like it's not worth it. This door, for some reason, they decided to make this a little puzzle as well. This door won't open unless you interact with a switch hidden behind a pillar in this room. And when you head over here, you'll probably notice straight away that an exclamation mark appeared. The switch is behind the pillar to your left here. You can't see it, but Vine will just interact with it, which is a bit of a cheap way of making a puzzle. Just make something invisible you have to interact with, but whatever. But as we open this door, we've got a cutscene that'll be introducing us to some more interesting characters.
Quite a performance.
Who are you?
I play the leading man. Who else? Fran, the Magicite.
Now then, I'll take that.
No, you won't. I found it. It's mine.
And then when I take it from you, it'll be mine. Exit stage right.
The gods do not smile on us.
I like it better that way.
Time to get out of here, because those two characters are more interesting than Vaughn. We can't have that. I jest. Like I said before, like Vaughn as a main character is really insignificant to the story. He's just along for the ride for the whole thing. Everyone else has more to do with the story and more involvement, with those two being a key example. But those two won't get their proper introductions until just another few seconds, because we've got to run up the stairs in this kind of weird, unnecessary gameplay moment. You literally just run up here, there's no treasure, there's no nothing, and there's not even any music. You just run up here, and when you get to the top of the stairs, a different cutscene activates. Woohoo.
What's going on?
The Ifrit, eh? That's quite an entrance. Impeccable timing. If I didn't know better, I'd say they were waiting all along. Stop running! End of the line. You have something that belongs to me. Damn!
All this way!
Fran, let's move! Off with you!
Let go of me!
Keep this up and I will. What's going on, Fran?
I don't know, it's not heating me.
Don't have time for this.
I'm slipping!
Not good.
What happened? Our hover didn't just drop. It disappeared.
Ah, forget it. Even if we could fly, the Ifrit's playing with fire, and I'd rather not get burned. We'll go the old-fashioned way. Not many Viera where you come from, thief?
It's Vaughn. Sorry.
Well, Fran is special in that she deigned to partner with a Hume.
Oh? Like a sky pirate that chooses to steal through the sewers.
Pirates? You're sky pirates? So you have an airship?
It's both here. Listen, thief, Vaughn, if you ever want to see your home again, you'll do exactly as I say. Myself, Fran, and you, we're working together now. Understood?
Don't even think you're getting this.
The thought never crossed my mind.
We now have a full team of 3. Balthier and Fran have both joined our team. Balthier is probably my favourite character in the game. He's most people's favourite character in this game, and it's the first character that I can confidently say will be a part of my final team on the other end of this adventure, which means I spent a lot more time before recording working out what I was going to have his two classes be, well, what his first one was going to be, and I eventually settled on Time Battle Mage, because although it will make him a little bit slower behind the rest, because Time Magic doesn't really get its benefits until later on, when it does, it will make him practically a necessity for the party. But that being said, any license points you have got will be replicated over, so in reality we have actually racked up 129 license points throughout the duration of this journey, and now they get to use them too. Same as when later party members join, or when Penelo rejoins much later on, she'll have as many license points as we've collected. Literally no one misses out on the license points you bank up. There is nothing stopping you, even though it take forever, from grinding thousands of license points as Vaan in the opening area of the game, and then literally everyone will have those thousands when they join. Having Fran as an archer is just made sense to me as well, because her dexterity, or whatever, I think it's her dex, that makes her bow, her archery or ranged attack skills better, but it's her strongest stat, so having her be able to do range based stuff makes sense. The game kind of encourages you to pick classes that match your character better, but don't. Pick what you want at the end of the day. The only reason I'm picking Archer or Fran is because it suits her stats. But you might have noticed that Balthier carries a gun, so you might want to go with like a machinist or something that uses guns. Don't just go with it because you want to role play and make them fit their categories. Pick what you want them to be. There's nothing stopping you from making a Balthier your white mage, if you want, just for an example, making him your knight if you wanted to. I'll still be doing it to an extent. There's another character joining later on that I'll be making my knight, just because I like having one member of my team be a physical brunt, whilst everyone else be more magic based. But that's later on. Once you've saved, there's a cut there because I didn't know if this video was going to be long enough for another video, or if I was going to split it onwards, but I decided to keep this in the end. When you come down here, Balthier is going to introduce you finally to Gambit customization, something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. Whilst Balthier is going through his tutorial, I'll run you through an easier one to understand, because a lot of this will go over your head. You know when, like, if you've ever tried doing anything with coding, you get a line of code and then you attach what you want to happen as a result to it. So like, if X happens, Y will happen, sort of thing. That's essentially how Gambits work. You pick a condition and then you pick a result. So in this tutorial given, ally HP less than 70%, use potion. So anytime any ally, he might specify as ally, not self, anytime any ally were to drop below 70%, Balthier in this example would use a potion on them. However, there's another one that says self and another one that says all. Much later on you want to get all, because then they'll, heal themselves as well, otherwise you're taking up 2 Gambit slots to make sure that they keep themselves alive. Or you just have another person also have ally HP below a set percentage. And what it's also teaching us here now is the numbering order is priority order. With how Balthier had currently set it in that tutorial, Balthier would prioritize attacking enemies, and only when there's no enemies left, use the healing. Something that is usually worth doing is having healing, but only when your health drops to a dangerously low percent, at bare minimum 50%, at the top of your list, but then have a top-up like healing bottom gambit at the bottom. That'd be like when the HP is below 80%, just top them up, but have it at the very bottom of the list, so it's after a fight is done and it doesn't matter. Anyway, I sped up sorting out everyone's gambits, so here is just their basic setup. I have someone to join on healing on emergencies, whilst everyone else is more based around and more casual about it. You can also go on the party screen change your party leader and change who is in your forefront. However, there's no real reason to change who is in your forefront and who is in your party at this point, so don't worry about it for now.
Insurgents. Most like they thought to take advantage of a lax watch at the palace while the fate's on, to feed the good consul a length of steel for his supper. I should think Vane used to such hospitality. Clever. He used himself as the bait to draw them near, and then sent in the air brigade. A fine bloody banquet. I dare say I've soiled my cuffs. If a dungeon's waiting for us at the end of the night, it had best have a change of wardrobe.
You'll also probably notice that we don't have that many gambits. Everyone only has 2. Which my description earlier of saying have a healing after and a healing before then might not make sense if you've never played this before. That's because, you probably can work out, that's not how many gambits you're going to have throughout the game. To get more gambits, every character has now got gambits added to their license board. So every time you essentially have to buy the additional 10 gambits on your board, being able to cap at 12 gambits, 12 programs to set your AI, which is something that personally I love. I think it's a really clever system, works really well, and is one of the most fluent uses of AI control I have ever seen. The degree of which you can program your allies to do very specific things in very specific ways to be your perfect setup is absurd, and I adore it. I love it. However, if you make the perfect setups, you're not really playing this game anymore, because you're just walking up to enemies and they will do everything for you, because you've set all the conditions already. You've already set if they get poisoned, heal off the poison. You've already set if they've got a weakness to electricity, hit them with thunder magic. That's what I mean, especially when you have all 12 gambits. You can make a team of monsters and you never have to touch a button. You can set it up so they will always heal off injuries that are necessary. You can make it so they will always heal off any condition. You can make it so they will always react differently in emergencies. The only thing you'll need to do is pay attention if an enemy is just so drastically stronger that it overrides no matter any coding you do. Because then you need to pay attention enough to flee, because running away is the only thing that isn't an AI command in this game, because it's the only thing that requires movement options. Anything that requires the only AI that you can't adjust, or the only thing in the AI you can't adjust, is where they move in combat. However, ranged attackers and magic users will always naturally stay a little further away from the battle than physical attackers will. So you can easily just work your strategies around that as well. If there's one character who, because of your setup, physically is quite weak, you might want to give them things that will make it so their AI keeps them further away from the enemies, so they're less likely to be targeted. We also picked up a light woven shirt there, which I believe no one can actually equip at this point. So I decided to set Fran to top up duty, so Vaughn gets backed up to 50% with his first aid ability because he now has used to it, whilst Balthier is our last resort if we're really struggling. But if we're really struggling to a point where all 3 pit members have to heal, we're probably in trouble anyway. And you might notice everyone's got different levels of speed stats. Balthier, being a time mage, his speed stat took a bit of a fucking punishment. So his speed is just that little bit lower than everyone else's, which is why you're noticing it takes him just that little bit longer than anyone else to attack. This will counteract itself later on when we start getting him using haste at the start of most fights and causing slow on the enemy, because eventually we'll be going so fast it won't matter, and the enemy will still be going at their default speed. But the rest of this dungeon is one giant circle back to the entrance, because we're trying to get out back to Rabinastre. And if you might have already gathered, the fact that the game said you won't be able to return for a while, it's not going to be as simple as just getting straight back into Rabinastre after leaving through the sewers. We are being actively hunted. They're definitely going to be aware after that rebellious attack that something is going on. Which, as Balthier commented, that's not on him. It was entirely coincidental that a rebellious force decided to attack the Empire at the same time Balthier and Vaughn happened to attack. And I think that's something I kind of enjoy as well. Like, there's a lot of war and politics in this game, but they still have, like, a lot of, like fate-like moments. Like there's still a fantasy element with it, even though it's like the most grounded Final Fantasy in the series. So I'm pretty, yeah, I don't know. I think about it, I'm pretty sure before 15 this was the most grounded. In fact, I'd still say it's more so than 15, because 15 still knows how to have a bit of fun. Because whilst 12 plays everything dead straight, and it is something you're gonna have to adjust to if you play a lot of other Final Fantasies. The tongue-in-cheek that was in a lot of the older Final Fantasies does not exist in this game. It is very serious compared to other Final Fantasies.
Who would be next?
Close ranks, bring her down!
Jump down! Hurry!
She's not alone!
Our ranks grow by the hour.
And our troubles with them.
Good old Vaan trying to be a hero for the people. The enemy in the middle, you see that crystal? That means he's protected, which means his physical defense has been artificially heightened. This is something that I forgot to mention last part because I was talking about different things. There was a random NPC out in the field that we walked past last part, whilst he was still trying to get the Sunstone, who casted Protect on both Vaan and Penelo as we walked past, and I just completely forgot to mention him. But that is what Protect looks like. There's a similar circular one for Shell, which is magic defense.
You alright?
Thank you.
I'm Vaughn. And this is Balthier, and hey! What's your name?
Amalia.
Amalia, huh? Nice to meet you.
There were others with me. I'm sorry. No.
Huh?
Oh, now isn't that impressive?
Don't get any ideas. I said it's mine.
I'm afraid the jury's still out on that one.
You stole that?
Yeah.
Have you finished? When the guards don't report in, they'll come looking for us.
If they aren't already.
You should come with us. Better than being by yourself.
Very well.
What's wrong with her?
You have a lot to learn before we even get started on your thievery.
What's that mean?
The situation requires I accept such help as I find, though it be from thieves. I shall accompany you until we find my companions, no longer.
Let's think of her as a guest then. Unlike Fran or myself, our guest probably won't be taking orders from anyone anytime soon, and she'll leave when she pleases. So we keep to our affairs and she to hers. I doubt we'll find her wanting in valor, being such an upstanding member of the insurgents.
Resistance. Well, what are we waiting for?
As Balthier just stated, we are now introduced to guests. Guests, you have limited amount of control over. You can check their stats, but you cannot check their equipment nor change it. You can't swap them in and out of the battle. You can't change their license values. You can't give them anything. They are themselves. They will do what they want and not what you want. However, guest characters essentially gives you another character. There are specific moments in this game where when you have a guest, like now, you will be working on a team of 4 because they always have to be in, and the game doesn't want to take away from your main 3 to allow a guest character in. So you have our main 3 and Amalia here in our main party. Early on in the game, I try and I'll try and buy as many gambits as possible, despite the fact there's very little I can do with them now. And you might notice that there's a lot of commands that are hidden from us that we can't use. Do you remember the gambit shop I visited? It was a few parts ago now, I'm aware, but there was a gambit shop I visited and I said we can't do anything here yet, we'll be coming back later, but I made a point of highlighting it because I wanted you guys to know it's there for later, since I'll be returning to it quite often. That is where you buy those commands. You buy the commands you want, so you buy the when poisoned do this. whilst the actual result on the end of it, like the conditions you have to buy, but the result of your condition is dictated by what you actually have on you. If someone has cure, then the result of using cure will be there. If no one has cure, the result of using cure won't be there, essentially. But we have a mini boss, and it's technically the main boss of this area, because the other boss, the actual main boss of this area, kind of runs away at the end of the fight. So this is the main boss you can kill, and you can steal caramel from the flans if you decide to steal from them, which we'll go into things like that a little later on. But like as I've mentioned before, the first thing you want to do with any boss encounter is try and see if you can steal anything from them. Sometimes there's nothing, but sometimes there is something, and so it's worth checking. And despite how aggressive this flan attacks, it's really not the end of the world. Sometimes enemies will have more than one thing to steal as well, which is why you might have noticed that I went out of my way to try and steal from it again, but got unlucky. Additionally, this is where the status condition blind is going to start showing its ugly mug officially. Blind reduces your accuracy to a very pathetic amount, making most of your physical attacks a guaranteed miss. So it's something that you want to deal with straight away, otherwise you'll just be punching at nothing. Later on, we'll be able to get a gambit that will resist and change that, and be able to make it so when blinded, you'll automatically use an eye drops or cast a spell that will remove it. Unfortunately, we don't get things like Asuna until much later on, which if you don't know what that is, Asuna, like a remedy, restores or removes every status condition in the game. However, even if you get Asuna, you might be hesitant to use it because it also gets rid of positive ones like Protect, Shell, and Haste. Every time you take down a significant fight or a boss monster, you'll get a congratulations screen pop up here, and you'll be able to hear the famous Final Fantasy melody. Even though it makes zero sense that all the characters are just kind of looking off into the distance like this, but whatever, just take it. And that's it for that mini-boss. When you're ready, move on. Your reward for defeating that boss is a Phoenix Down. A Phoenix Down being a revive if someone falls in battle. So if their HP is 0. There's also another item here, but I believe this is just a generic one. Here, Dock Mode, that's just a generic one. And as there's nowhere else to really go, I guess we'll press back up these stairs. Oh no, an enemy literally... Okay, I want to point out when I was recording it, because it reminded me as it went up. When I was recording this, that wasn't me moving, that was the AI automatically getting closer to the enemy as soon as the run away. Which is something that some people do. When you're just trying to explore, it might be worth turning off the gambit for at least your playing character, the character you're in control of. It's entirely optional. It doesn't bother me enough to do so. If I really wanted to run away, I'd hold down R2, because R2 turns off turns off all characters' gambits until you let go of the trigger, so you can just evade encounters. But it's never really bothered me enough, and it's free experience to take it. And you want to be taking on every enemy you can the whole time you have a party of 4, because it's an advantage you don't always get. Having guests in this game, the way they've worked guests in this game is something that I thoroughly enjoy. Being a bit more of an old school Final Fantasy fan, I love having a team of 4. And it's a shame that it took all the way till 15 before they officially brought back teams of 4. Because you only get teams of 4 temporarily because of guest characters, but officially your max team size is 3 in this game. And it's been that way since Final Fantasy VII. And it's just something I miss. I miss having a team of 4 because I grew up with the SNES trilogy. Particularly Final Fantasy IV, which admittedly had a team of 5, which was even bigger. But then I also grew up with Persona, which also had a team of 5, but then lowered to a team of 4. So I'm just used to 4 being the golden number. So when Final Fantasy lowered it to 3, and they're stuck with 3 all the way to 15, it just felt weird. But either way, I've got to wrap this up, because we're running out of video time. Next time on Final Fantasy XII, we'll take on the main boss of this area, and find out what happens next. But until then, you guys take care now.